Welcome to the No Script Show, where apparently my laser eye surgery worked a little bit too well because I can see the fucking future when it comes to electoral results. How's it going, gents?
Good.
I'm well, Odin, and yourself?
No, it's good. It's good to be back on the air.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, man. Yeah, 2021 has been very hectic, I think, for all of us. I think it's a year that's been keeping people more busy than usual. A lot of things that people need to new things that people need to adapt to. I think a lot of people are really working hard as well, but especially people in industries that are picking up the slack from 2020 now, where they just had like a business or industry void for months.
Right.
And yeah, so 2021 does feel very hectic. It feels like everyone is like playing catch up to a certain extent, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that here in the US we're still dealing with supply chain issues, but we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, you're going to have to tell me, as our on the ground first-hand reporter from the US for the No Script Show,
Yeah.
our US correspondent, you're going to have to tell us, are things actually getting more expensive, and what's the gas prices like?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute, but I
Yeah.
suppose we want to get into the local politics first.
Oh, right. Mm-mm. All right. So yeah, maybe I think I'll add to your intro there, where I think it was only you and me that I really saw in our circles on social media that said Amma Mashaba and Action SA was going to outperform expectations. Everyone else
Yeah.
said it was like 1%, 2% party. And
Yeah.
but neither me or you were like hype beasts and saying like they're going to win every municipality in Johannesburg's going to be
No.
green and whatever. Like it's
Yeah.
just they're going to have a significant impact where they are significant to the coalition talks.
Yeah. I mean, it's because that's kind of it's I'm glad you touched on that's kind of the thing is that some people sometimes turn into like full on like there is a great amount of gradation possible between being an absolute hype beast for your party or for a party, even if it's not your party. But there's a differing levels of gradation between being an absolute hype beast and saying, oh, they'll never get more than 1%. And I think you and I, yeah, like you said, pretty much hit the spot on that one. That they're probably going to do a lot better than most people realize. And yeah, I saw for the longest time, you know, when they're out and about doing on the ground campaigns and all that, insert comment about touch grass here, but like Twitter is still not real life. And you just a few minutes ago gave a pretty good analysis about that.
Oh yeah, I think there's a very stark difference that we can see here between let's take two case studies, Action SA, and then the other case study from just a few years ago in 2019, the South African Capitalist Party. Now the big stark difference there is the South African Capitalist Party tried to do an almost 90% internet-based campaign, and they didn't win a seat in parliament. But Action SA, on the other hand, you could see them every day posting photos of them going into communities, fixing potholes, helping people, really taking part in the community, talking to people on the ground. And that's, I think, what made a very big difference is that in South Africa, I mean, Martin did mention that there was this one politician that won on an internet-based campaign somewhere abroad. I can't remember where, but I remember that story as well. Excuse
Yeah,
me?
it's one of the old Soviet countries.
It's probably somewhere in the
So
Balkans.
it
It's
might be
always the Balkans.
it might be nuclear fallout that caused it to win, but people are a bit strange
Yeah.
up.
But yeah, so the thing is in South Africa, I think we can very confidently say our society hasn't been, and I use this non-existent word, internetized to the point where you can really do a solidly just
But
social media based campaign.
but I think you're missing one big point or aspect of that the
Mm,
ZACP had, and that's
mm,
well, I knew it wasn't apparent in their campaigning, but I knew about it because I was sort of involved with some of their stuff. Is
mm,
Kenton Pilay's whole idea behind it is this is the principles. And if the people support it, the people do the work and get the message out there. And I strongly suspect that's why it failed. Because, like I've said numerous times, South Africa is a collection of mediocre citizens at best. That's why the Action SA did better than the ZACP did, because Action SA went out and they shook the people's hands and they kissed the babies and they fixed a bottle or two for a photo op, and so they seem to be doing the work. The second you expect the citizens, the average voters, to actually do the campaigning and promote the party and promote the principles, it falls flat on its face. I suspect that's the biggest reason why they didn't get more support, is because I saw it while we were busy campaigning as well. You had a fairly decent support or following on your social medias, but with fairly decent interaction. But when it comes down to actually people that's willing to get up and go and do some promoting out in public in the real world, it just falls flat on its face. You had a small group of people that did the actual campaigning on their own, and that organized and did the campaigning, and I think that's why it didn't get anywhere.
Odin, your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I suppose that's a pretty good analysis. But one other thing I wanted to point out is, and this is sort of a side tack from both of what you've pointed out, is that with the ZAC, and I say this as someone who at the time really believed in them, and I was like, we were straight up. You can go back in our podcast, you can see we were straight up shilling for them because I thought it was a great idea. But and something that in the back of my mind affected me back then, and I should have heeded it also, was that for them it's like, this is just a venture. It's for all 10 people who are involved. This is just a venture. With Action SA, this is it. This is the purpose. This is the mission. This is and there's a difference between that and something just being a venture, and that energy kind of radiates through for a lot of people. In fact, now that we talk about it, is the ZACP still a thing?
I don't think so.
Sort of, kind of, not really. But yeah, I also think Kantempila and most of the guys that were involved with it in the leadership realized that your average South African voter is not going to do the actual work to get things changed in the country. It's just not the type of country we are. The average voters, they like their nanny state way too much, whether they want to admit it or not. They want the government to do it for them, or the party that they support to do it for them. They don't want to. They'll sign a petition here and stuff like that, or share a post on social media, but they won't go out and actually just. I suspect it's basically run its course. I did see with the municipal elections, they sent out that they were trying to get some people to run for councillors, for like ward councillors under the banner, but nothing really came of that. So I think that's basically died a slow, quiet death.
Yeah, Odin, you mentioned something there that I think is very important, and that's energy. This is what in American politics they always talk about, energizing your base. And I think it's something very relevant, and it's something that has an impact. So you can see this in Donald Trump's campaigning, for example, where he does these rallies. These rallies aren't there to convince new voters to vote for him. It's to keep the people that have already decided or want to vote for him. It's to keep those people energized and to keep those people motivated and like feeling like we're going to win, and then get those people to turn out. And there's something that happened in the previous election cycle that I think demonstrates a very big faux pas in regards to that approach and that phenomenon, and that's the whole DA posters thing. So DA put up the posters. It was the big internet controversy, like not a non-controversy, if you will, where people really weren't upset by them. Just a very small band of people that were never going to vote DA anyway said like, these posters are. So just for very brief context for those that maybe don't know, the Democratic Alliance opposition party in South Africa went to a community called Phoenix that went during the unrest in South Africa. Those residents came together. and defended their community. And then the ANC and the EFF called everyone in that community racist for doing that. And then the DA went and put up posters in that community saying the ANC calls you racist, we call you heroes. And then this non-controversy started on social media. And I was just kept thinking, don't apologize, don't take them down, for goodness sake, don't take these posters down. Don't do it. You don't know what you're going to unleash when you do that. And then they did it. They did like a groveling apology, took down the posters, pretty much by taking down the posters, admitting that they're racist and all these accusations of racism against them is true. And also everyone that defended them on social media, they just threw them under the bus and humiliated them. So, but here's where that energy comes in, because what happened then was, now you've pissed everyone off. Now, in game theory, they took a win-lose situation where it's a small loss, big win, and they turned it into a lose-lose situation. I mean, game theorists cringing as they watched as it happened. And the thing is, now, and here's where that energy thing comes in. Taking down the posters, I think, had a bigger impact than actually putting them up. Because putting them up just it's not going to, let's be real, it's not going to really convince like droves of people to vote for the DA. It might get some. And it's not really going to piss off people so much that they'd say, oh, we're not going to vote for the DA, maybe like a handful. But when you're taking down the posters, I think that actually had a very significant impact on people's energy and people because of the message that it sent. It showed that if a social media mob or people in the media come after us and call us racist, and the ANC calls us racist, we'll back down. So the message that they're sending is, we'll oppose expropriation without compensation until the day where an angry social media mob calls us racist for doing so, or the ANC says only racists oppose expropriation without compensation. Then we'll apologize and support the policy. That's pretty much the implication here, and that's why I really sent a very strong message to the DA and the more partisan voters when that happened, and they wrote off all this reaction from people being frustrated with them as just like folly. I'm like, you need to understand where this is coming from. This is coming from a very deep place of desperation from your own constituents, people that get bullied and attacked on a daily basis from people that want to get apologies and groveling from them. And all they want is their representatives to stand up against these people and these forces and to pretty much say, no, I'm not going to apologize if I know in my heart that I'm right. And I actually used the opportunity to do a little bit of marketing for AfriForum as well. I posted the screenshots of when you Google AfriForum apologizes, and I edited it that it looks like 0 results show up. But I did that deliberately because if people actually fact check that meme, they see that all the results that they're going to get is people apologizing to AfriForum and not us apologizing to them.
Yeah, but that's one thing I've been saying for a long time. I would like the DA to actually just grow a pair like with the posters incident. They should have taken it down. They should have printed 100,000 more of those posters and go put it up all over South Africa in every freaking neighborhood. Double down and go for the jugular. If they would just, and that was a brilliant opportunity for them. They should have, if they did a bit of research, then just if you go and look to, I can't remember which year was it, where the Nationalist Party in Poland, you should have go check how those guys campaigned. It is spectacular. Because what the DA should have done, and they should have done this a long time ago, they should have started when Zuma was still president. You attack the ANC every level, every opportunity, day and night. You just keep on attacking them. Otherwise, they're never going to get anywhere in South African politics. They've reached their high water mark, and they're going to slowly fade away, just like their predecessor party did. They're just going to slowly fade away because they don't attack. And that's what the people want. The people that do not support the ANC, they don't want a diplomatic, let's talk about this. Let's not offend anybody. They want someone
this is just a disagreement against parties. Like, no, this is the difference between like an angel and the Antichrist. Exactly. That's how you frame.
Because for the average worker in South Africa, that's what you're experiencing. South Africa, the economy was moving upwards up into around about, I'd say, 2010. And after the World Cup, it just slowly started sliding into the crapper. And your average working guy, I mean, I can see this stuff sliding away into oblivion. Because a lot of the industries, one of the industries that I do work for is the concrete industry, which is construction, and the level of just backward sliding and recession in that one industry is spectacular. We're talking about the large companies, large national companies closing down 50% of their capacity, just closing it down because there's not enough work. So, and people know, the average people that doesn't support the ANC, they know it's because of the ANC. So they want a party that will actually push and attack to get them out of the government. But the DA just refuses to do that. They like this broad church thing, and it's not going to work.
No, it's I tweeted this out a while back where I said the ANC and the EFF want to rule, the DA want to be liked. And that's what we see. And I mean, what you mentioned there about things not going well, there's a deceptiveness to it as well in what's going on. People might still be earning the same amount or even more than they did a few years ago, but they can't buy the same amount of stuff anymore. I mean, I can experience that with my own budgeting. You can't afford the same stuff anymore, even if you're earning more. That's the deceptiveness, and that's actually when we talk about later about what's going on in the US, there seems to be some parallels there as well.
I just want to make a quick point on you guys mentioning the energy with the politicians, and there's another sinister side to that energy that I can't help seeing it. If you take ZACP for instance, and you take Herman Mashaba, yes, he's much more energized towards his campaign and his goal and what he wants to accomplish. But I immediately think, okay, the big difference is the guys from the ZACP are not looking for a paycheck. They're saying this is what we support, this is the policies what we support, this is what we're going to do. If you like it, vote for us. If you don't, don't. Where the other politicians, they have to be energetic because that's their paycheck that they're working for. You have to dance for your money. And that's just, I don't know, it's like a sinister. Yes, the people like the energy, but why are they so energized? They need that. If they don't win, they don't get their paycheck, but that's politics everywhere, especially in the US.
Well, I suppose that would be like another parallel with Mr. Mashaba is that the dude actually makes less money by going into this. He could have just gone full businessman and said, screw this country, and absconded or done whatever. Like, he's actually making less money than he would have.
Yeah, I'll give this to him. He is playing the long game in that respect. Because if he can successfully build his base in South Africa and actually slowly move towards approaching actually governing the country, he stands, and I can't remember who it was, but someone made the analysis that people chase money up to a certain point. And then when they reach a certain level of wealth, the money doesn't matter anymore to them. Then it's power and control and social status. So that's why you get guys like Bill Gates and Trump and all those guys, Elon Musk and those. They'll do things that seem stupid.
You mentioned the guy that we do not mention on the show. You guys know how I feel about that guy.
You've now suspended from the podcast for 3 episodes. Red card.
I didn't cover. Did you see that thing that Stunty pulled on Twitter?
Something about voting for his shares in his company of evil.
Yeah, he put it up to Twitter. He must they sell like 3 billion or something worth of shares and then donate it to charity, or yes or no. And they voted yes, and he said sweet, and he did it. But that aside, the point I'm trying to make is at a certain point, your wealthy people stop chasing the actual monetary wealth, and they start chasing the non-monetary points on the social status, at your power, control, and all of that kind of things. So, and I mean that I get the feeling that might be the same. I might be wrong. Look, I don't know the guy personally, so he might be actually legitimately genuine about his whole campaign, or at least mostly genuine about it. But that's why I said he might be losing money. But yeah, there's also the chance that he's chasing different forms of wealth and not the monetary wealth.
All right. Fair.
Odin, can you give us? Can we switch over to foreign correspondence section of the episode.
I will. But my last thing on the whole thing, one of the biggest things with the DA is they need to stop attacking newer or smaller parties, because
that's such a bad strategy.
That doesn't scream confidence to me. And two, yes, you guys, you're right. The DA should grow a pair, but they never will as long as John is in charge. The dude is the epitome of school PTA. I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to you. Like, John, come on, bro. Sack up.
But he made the same mistake that Donald Trump made and that Nelson Mandela made when he came to power of the country. They don't learn from dictators. Okay, there's a little book. It's a thin little book, The Dictator's Handbook. Okay, and any aspiring politicians listening, go and read that book. The second you get to power, you cull at least 60 to 70% of your supporters that got you to power. You take them out of the game, off of the board, and bring in new guys. If you leave them in there too long, they're gonna work you out. Either they're going to take over your organization, or they're going to force you out. It's just the way it works. And that's what John came to power in the DA, or he's like now the big hoon of the DA, but he doesn't get rid of the whiny little ankle biters that's in his party.
The people that are constantly leaking information to the media from inside the party.
Yeah,
exactly. You get rid of them. Whether they helped you to get into your position or not, get rid of them. Clean house. Bring in new people, keep the position, and you set the culture that you do your job and you do it well, or you're out. But none of them do this. They let their oaks linger in there, and they root themselves into the organization, and then you can't get rid of them, and eventually they get rid of you. And that's happened with all the leaders of the DA. They get taken out by these whiny little ankle biters, and that's just there for either to sabotage the party or to make money. Yeah. And they I don't know why they keep them there. I mean, Trump did the same thing. He didn't take out the people that could take him out. He left them in control, or he put the wrong people.
Well, sometimes he even appointed them. The people.
Yeah, sometimes he even appointed them.
Undermined them.
But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, we're getting a special transmission now from the United States. We are heading to Florida. That's where this is coming from. And Odin Moja is on the ground there. Mr. Moja, what can you tell us?
Thanks, gents. I'm here in Tallahassee, Florida. So we are looking at quite an electoral slide in the last couple of months. So let's start with the big one, Virginia. Where, Terry McAuliffe basically lost his. It was his campaign to lose, and he lost it.
He lost it.
And I'm gonna put it to you this way: there's this growing sentiment in American politics that things like the culture war is gross and we shouldn't partake in it, and it's detestable. We shouldn't partake in it. I know a bunch of organizations, a large swaths of both the mainstream Republican Party think that, large swaths of like the LP and other liberty organizations think that. In fact, it's only the mainline Democrats who understand the importance of the culture and the culture war. But like, I'm making this statement because I know a lot of these, like especially the libertarian movement. They're like, forget the culture war. It's so gross. Don't fight it. Just don't. That's stupid. Because simply saying I'm not partaking in the culture war doesn't mean that there won't be a winner eventually. It just means you're taking yourself out from being a possible winner. And worse yet, simply saying I'm not partaking doesn't mean you will not eventually be subject to the whims of the eventual winner. You
might not be interested in the culture war, but the culture war is definitely interested in you.
Exactly. So you can say it's detestable, but you can understand it's a detestable thing that you have to take a part in.
Yes, but it's like France could have said in World War I and World War II, okay, listen, we're not going to play. We're not going to partake in your silly little spat. They still would have gotten run over. In fact, they would have gotten out hiding even quicker than they did. You have to to your point, one thing that a lot of people don't realize is culture. A civilization is built on cultures. It's not the other way around. A nation is built on culture. So if you're not going to fight in a culture war, all that's going to happen is your culture is going to get demolished. It's going to get wiped off.
Yeah. And so basically what happened there is that it was one on culture issues. It was one on in fact I don't like single variate analysis for obvious reasons, but I think one of the critical turning points that won Virginia for Youngkin is that when McAuliffe said, I don't think parents should have any say in what their teachers are teaching their kids in school, because in that he said, we will raise your children and we'll teach them how to think and everything. At that point, McAuliffe basically handed the race to Youngkin, and then we have the Lincoln Project, who are quote unquote conservatives, quote unquote. They hired a bunch of interns to stand outside of Glenn Youngkin's bus in the tiki torches and white t-shirts, white collared shirts and slacks, reminiscent of the Charlottesville rally, Unite the Right thing. And then they were dumb enough to do that with a bunch of people who the internet quickly found out were Dem operatives, basically. Now, you've basically ruined those kids' lives, first of all, because they're now a living meme. And two, you just made yourselves look even worse. But then again, I guess the Lincoln Project has never shied away from ruining young kids and going after kids.
Yeah, it's never bothered them.
Yeah. That's for those of you
just
who
like
don't know,
just like the guy Rittenhouse shot.
Yeah, that's gonna be a thing in a minute. But so we'll get to that in a minute. So essentially, it was one on culture, and then in New Jersey, a truck driver who reportedly spent $153 on his campaign, narrowly almost unseated the incumbent Dem. I can't remember his name. That's how irrelevant he is. By a truck driver who spent 150. Because at some point, again, the culture, people say, "Okay, I'm sick of this.
Okay.
I'm going to
go ahead and call it and say the truck driver actually won, but then the deceased voters came in for the Dems and just barely clinched it for their candidate.
Yes. That's pretty much my perspective, because when you again find another 40,000 or whatever votes suddenly when it's very narrow, I'm like, that's odd. That's the odds of that occurring naturally are pretty slim.
And the odds of that occurring in every freaking election is even less likely.
Yeah. I don't know if you have anything to say on that, but yeah, it's all of these, and that there's a bunch of elections like that where all of these people are now waking up and they're like, it's about the culture now, and I've had enough of this. I want to be able to like when you have I can't remember what the title of the book it was, but it was in the library, and it's basically a kid's story, but it's about two boys and the one's giving the other kid a blowjob. Like straight up, like it's graphically describes how the one kid blows the other kid. And I'm like, so you're writing child pornography and putting this on reading lists for children? I'm sorry, like no.
I'm convinced the attacks on the slippery slope and calling it a fallacy was just a psyop.
Yeah.
At this point, yeah. I mean, you and I remember, like years ago, we also used to be like, we don't like slippery slope, but maybe it's true. At this point,
now it's just holy shit.
Yeah.
Because I mean, but it started with drag queen story time in some of the schools.
Yes.
And then you end up with freaking child porn on the reading lists. That's just
Now, Odin, the question that I asked you at the beginning of this episode, are things actually getting more expensive in the USA, or is
absolutely,
inflation just normal and it's actually a good thing?
when you see the newspaper time, I mean, okay, I will tell you now in my own, even in a state like Florida, like when like a gallon of milk, and I'm just using like random numbers here, but you know, you have situations where a gallon of milk has gone from like $2.20 to like $2.76. That's a huge spike in a couple of months. That's a huge spike. Huge spike. And the fuel prices, I mean, luckily are still better this side, but in some areas, in some states, they're paying $5 a gallon.
Well, that's what we're paying.
Yes, but given the fact that just a year or two ago they were paying $1.50, $2 a gallon, that's a horrific spike.
One of my favorite memes from the Carl Rittenhouse story is someone took a screenshot from the video of that night, and he's walking past a gas station, and the caption is, "Those Carl Rittenhouse gas prices looking pretty good right now."
I'll get there. It's just one more thing on the inflation is I was actually at a street party last Friday night, because we have these street parties the night before football games, which we'll get into at the end of the show. Suffice it to say that Let's Go, like and there's a country singer there, and between every set, basically, like somebody will inevitably start a Let's Go Brandon chant. It's unbelievable. And we actually know a couple of Oaks named Brandon, so it's an interesting time for them. They also chanted it at the football game, which was just wow.
But this is something that I said the other day to someone as well, is that if you're looking at, okay, let's maybe start a little bit earlier. Since the financial crisis of like 2008, the main themes that we're constantly hearing is like recovery, things are getting better, things are stabilizing. And then you look around you and you look at countries like Germany that's getting like record inflation that it hasn't had for like a decade or 2 decades. And you look at countries like the UK and the USA also getting like inflation rates that are similar to what they had in the 90s. And you're looking at, for example, just people really starting to struggle. And you realize things aren't getting better. We are not in a recovery phase. The world economy is still limping along ever since the financial crisis. We haven't really been able to recover. It's just a fairy tale that we've kind of climbed the mountain now and things are going to get better.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's, again, it's a culture thing. It's when people can't afford to eat or drink, when their kids are being taught things that no child should be taught. That's just handing victory over to the Republicans. And oddly enough, this, in my opinion, is actually a moment for the Libertarian Party to make real gains, especially, and I hate to have to deal with this, but honestly, the best part of the Libertarian Party is the Mises Caucus, because they're actual libertarians and not just Lolberts. But if the Libertarian Party wanted to make gains, now would be the time when people are upset with both sides. But instead, they're too busy being Lolberts and talking about like open borders and stuff like that, and silly things, which Ernst and I mean, hell, we had a whole discussion about that on Twitter. I made a whole video like, hey, by the way, there are large swaths of the libertarian movement that aren't down with this. And there are articles in the Journal of Libertarian Sciences, which is a pretty respected thing.
Yeah, you always pull those up as your like trump card.
Yeah. Like, okay.
Don't you think it might be time that the Libertarian Party, the sane ones within the party, split and start something new? Because the Libertarian Party in America has been so tainted with the Lolberts that I don't think they'll ever be able to wash that stink off.
That's sort of what the Mises Caucus is. And I guess maybe the Mises Caucus in the LP needs to join with the Liberty Caucus in the Republican Party and just form something new, because
I think there will be a couple of big candidates that they might be able to rope in, candidates that don't really fit with the Dems or the Republicans in general. Like the show favorite Tulsi Gabbard is one of them, because she doesn't really fit currently
Hawaiian-
fit in either of the two parts. Yeah, the
Hawaiian mommy.
Yes,
Hawaiian
that
mommy. She's so fine. Oh.
But also another thing on in the US, I don't know what the hell, because I see there's areas where the people are now going to court to be allowed to work on cotton farms. They're fighting to get back onto cotton
Oh
farms.
yeah,
What the
because
hell?
they
What?
imported a bunch of cheap labor Afrikaners.
From South Africa.
Yeah. Oh, that thing. Yeah.
I
You
read
know,
that,
like
I'm
that Martin
wait,
Luther King,
what?
that picture of Martin Luther King looking down on the sky, and it's a black guy whipping 3 white guys.
Yeah.
That meme has basically come true now.
I saw that article. I'm like, okay, what? You guys are complaining because you can't work on the cotton farm? Didn't you fight a war about this, sort of?
No, none of the black people are doing that. It's
Well, the argument has a picture of a black guy standing next to a bale of cotton with the headline, they're into court because the farmers are laying off the black workers to hire cheaper South African labor.
Yeah, no, and I remember there was like an official tweet from the media company that reported on it, and all the replies were just like, no, yeah, so now we need to build a wall, huh?
Yeah, I mean, South Africa. I'm just glad of this trend, because now it's basically South Africans are basically real life Mandalorians that we just like abandon our like we like get what actually happened to at the end of the last Mandalorian series. I can't remember. It's been that long, but anyway.
I don't really watch a lot of series.
But
I've no idea what you're talking about.
We're basically all mercenaries, South Africans. We're mercenaries in one way or another. World-renowned mercenaries. But yeah, you mentioned the Rittenhouse thing, which at this point, I don't know how this trial is still going, because we have the evidence, and the prosecution's witnesses were basically witnesses for the defense, because like Gage. By the way, while we're on this, because I've heard a lot of like conservative commentators say this, and like, oh, and by the way, he had a criminal record. I'm like, guys, you need to stop. I get that you're using that as background as to who they are, but it's not pertinent to the fact of the moment. What we're discussing is, was this an act of self-defense? Whether or not this guy has a criminal record is irrelevant in that particular moment. Just focus on
I've personally refrained from following that case too closely, because I'm just like, it's a very significant case in the American culture war, but for me it's just I don't want to. But I made this decision before that. I'm like, I'm not gonna get sucked into this. There's a very high chance of just more disappointment and like blackpilling.
But the reason why I follow it is because, and I see a couple of people made the same observation on social medias. What the prosecution is effectively doing is they prosecuting self-defense. So the effect of it is, should Rittenhouse be found guilty, that'll be a massive knock for self-defense, especially in your Dem states.
Yeah. Where
people are just going to start, okay, wait, I can't really defend myself. I can't defend my property because I might end up in jail. And like many people have pointed out, if America sneezes, the rest of the world catches the flu. So every time, if something like that starts to gain traction there, then in countries like South Africa, we are truly stuffed. Because the second, the minute that there's international precedence for lessening citizens' ability for property defense or self-defense, our government's going to grab it, and there's a lot of other countries that'll do exactly the same. They'll just follow suit. So
that's what's on trial here, actual self-defense. Look, guys, I've actually had no choice but to follow it. You can argue. So first of all, like I said, conservative commentators, you guys need to stop pointing out so and so had a criminal record. It's not pertinent to the action that was happening in that moment. But so I will say this. I didn't comment on it for the longest time because I wanted all the video and all the evidence to come out. The video evidence is pretty clear in defense of Kyle, and there's separate arguments here. There are arguments of, should he have gone across state lines? Did he break the law in this and that? Those are arguable. Okay, and those are arguable against him. But in the issue of, was he in that specific atomic moment defending himself? At this point, I find it very hard to say no, he wasn't just defending himself. The dude runs away from these guys. He's prone. Yeah. This dude is hitting him in the head with a skateboard. The other guy, and as the critical moment said, the main guy whose arm got blown up,
he's pointing a gun at him.
He's pointing a gun at him, and he says, "So Kyle did not fire until you lifted your gun and prepared to fire on him?" Yes. And the prosecution's lawyer says, directed verdict, which basically means, yeah, we're done with this. We're done with this. Even the prosecution's guy was like, yeah, we're done with this.
But I'm surprised that judge hasn't gotten off of his little stand there, took a gavel and started beating the prosecutor, because there was a couple of times we got so annoyed with the dude. It's actually comical to watch.
Yeah, but there was another disturbing thing that came from this case, and that's the FBI footage that leaked from that what was the thermal imaging, that a drone was pretty much filming what was going on. And the implication there is that the FBI is just going to these events and filming people using thermal imaging with their drones.
Disturbing, but not like surprising to me.
Yeah. But still, they didn't. That video, we only have that video because it leaked, but it gives very substantial evidence to the case. But they didn't release it.
Yeah, they sat on it. But did you see the other thing that I saw on social media when the trial started? The amount of social media influencers, or whatever they call themselves, that all of a sudden was like, oh, I thought the guys that he attacked or the guys that he shot were black.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, a sizable chunk of people that thought that this was a race thing. It was a white guy shooting black guys. And I'm like,
nope, they're all white.
You must give this to the media, the mainstream media in America. They really know how to freaking spin a story. They can really paint over anything just about.
Yeah. So that's...
Yeah, well, don't believe your lying eyes.
That's basically the point we've gotten to in the culture. Don't believe your lying eyes. But yeah, that's about most I've got to report from the US thing. I do, however, have something to discuss in terms of let's move to sports for a minute real quick.
Who's our sports commentator?
You guys can do SA side. I've got American sports to commentate on.
Okay, SA sports has died.
Yeah, on the SA side, I don't really watch a lot of sport anymore. Like, if I wanted to be preached to by people that think they're self-righteous and that I'm a terrible person, I'd rather just not.
Just go to like any liberal arts college campus.
Yeah. No, dude. Yeah. Sports it's in such a state. It's horrible. It's really demoralizingly bad.
Interesting. Well.
But what's happening in the world of football on the American side?
Hell yes. Okay.
Someone kicked the ball.
Okay, so I will say my other opening quip for this would have been "Welcome to No Script Show," where if you live in Miami, it sucks to be you.
Hasn't it always?
AKA, because that's a play on the word the U. The university is the U. It's just a giant U, University of Miami, which is ironic because they're the richest school in Florida. They don't even own a football stadium. They just rent the Hard Rock football stadium, whereas Florida State has one of the biggest football stadiums in the United States. So we played our last home game of the season yesterday, and we took a powerful lead. So our current first-string quarterback, Jordan Travis, has this really bad habit of getting one or two touchdowns up on the other team and then just relaxing and just letting it all go, starts making mistakes, throwing interceptions, all sorts of stuff. And then the other teams capitalize on that and just go to town on us. But fortunately, we managed to avoid that to some extent by threatening to occasionally sub him with Mackenzie Milton. But the point here is in the third quarter with about fourth quarter with about 2-3 minutes to go, it was 28-23 in favor of Miami. And Florida State made one last touchdown in the last minutes of the game, bring it to 29. And then the field goal kick was good, bringing us to 31, which means that we won in the last fraction of a second of the game. And honestly, last night, Tallahassee was the greatest city to be in last night with the joy from that. It was cold. It was 12 degrees. And I still say degrees in Celsius because I use real measurements, but it was one hell of a party last night. So shout out to Florida State Seminoles, shout out to Coach Mike Norvell, and shout out to the great Bobby Bowden, our legendary coach who actually recently passed on this year. He was a very hardworking, he's actually one of those American sort of sports guys who was open, and this is something we mentioned as well, Ernst, in our interview with Mr. Ashaba, is open about his faith for years and years and years and years, and he was just he changed so many kids' lives just by being a good father figure to them. So it was great that in the year of his death, the season of his death, we could pull out that win at Dirk Campbell Stadium on Bobby Bowden Field this year. So that was awesome. Plus we got to beat Miami. The only thing that I'm upset about is that during what we call Miami Hate Week, which is the week where we post anti-Miami memes, Barstool Sports FSU somebody, and I'm not going to name who they are. But somebody posted a photo of somebody from Gain Street in Tallahassee, and they put fuck 305, fuck the U. Now that's fine. I'm fine with that. I hate the 305. That's the Miami area code. But then they went too far and they said Pitbull sucks, and they said fuck Pitbull. That was uncalled for. You do not hate on Mr. 305, okay? You don't hate on Mr. Worldwide, okay? This might be football, but we are still civilized. You don't hate on Mr. 305.
Do they still do that where they steal the opposing team's mascots for in the lead up to the big games? Because I know in the 90s and thereabout, it was a big thing where high schools and so on, if you had a big match coming up, the teams would try and steal the other team's mascots.
I mean, that'd be pretty hard to. That's more of a Midwestern thing, not a Southern thing.
Okay, all right.
Plus, it's hard to steal our mascot because he's literally a guy dressed up as Chief Osceola with a burning spear. I don't want to go try steal a dude with a burning spear.
No, you steal his costume, Odin. You don't steal the actual human being.
Oh. I was gonna be like,
you've spent too much time in the swamps, Odin.
I'm in North Florida. There are no swamps here.
I told you that is just Hollywood propaganda. Okay, everything is swamps.
South Florida is North Florida is basically just South Georgia or East Alabama. It's so different from South Florida. It's unbelievable. You could actually split Florida into 3 regions: North, Central, and South. They're so different to each other. But yeah.
Sorry, did you see that other article where one of the football teams, I cannot remember for the life of me which one was it, they beat the other team something like 61-0, and the team refused to, they call it a mercy or something like that, where they end the game early because they're just annihilating the other team. And they got a load of flack because they didn't apologize for winning and they didn't call the game early, and because they were giving the other team a hiding. But it's one of the, I think, New York State or something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't check that.
The weirdest thing is they didn't take the mercy. It's something, if I understand it correctly, it's something like where the winning team can elect to have the game ended earlier so that the defeat isn't so humiliating, quote unquote, for the losing side. And they refused to do that, and they beat them like 61 or 63-0. And they got a lot of flack in the newspapers and stuff for that, because they didn't want to show mercy towards the other team.
Interesting. Oh. I mean, we beat you Massachusetts 59-3. That was pretty humiliating. So yeah, so I live in a town where it's very much, again, this goes back to to what you said, Ernst, is it's the culture, and it is a football culture here. Like the whole town shuts down. It's the state capital, so it's actually reminiscent of Pretoria in many ways. But the whole town shuts down, and you have parents coming in from all over Florida, some even from outside of Florida, and they'll wear like FSU dad, FSU mom. The tailgate braaiing goes on till who knows what hour. Before the game, and they're serious about their tailgates, man. They got like everything grilling and all the setup with like some people have extra big screen TVs to watch the game before the game. Like if there's another football game, like you really need to witness one of these tailgates to see how seriously people take it. But yeah, it goes back to the culture. It's things like that, and like I discussed with Ernst that you adopt a highway so everybody knows whose fault it is that this section of road is a disaster area. Just by the way, because your organization's name is there. Yeah.
Maybe a final thing that I wanted to talk about before I have to dip. Odin, is there any Odin or Martin? Is there any tech stories that stood out to you? Because this is a tech podcast.
I have the worst tech card. I don't have. I've actually been involved in my own studies so much I haven't really had time to read up stuff. But I will say, sorry, while I'm talking, is that shout out to as a moment of remembrance, shout out to all the veterans for this past Veterans Day and Remembrance Day, Poppy Day, and maybe you can comment on that. But tech wise, I don't. No, I know that we're working on James Webb Telescope pretty well.
That's almost launching now, isn't it?
Yeah, James Webb Telescope is almost launched, which is really great. Because then we'll finally be able to prove theoretically there is something that is gravitationally perturbing the orbits of the outer things like Pluto in there. We just can't see it. I'm not saying what it is. I'm just saying, because I know that's just conspiracy theory rabbit hole. I'm just saying from a mathematical standpoint, as a scientist, I would say, yes, I've seen the numbers. There is something perturbing it there. And obviously, just as a quick correction in terms of tech, after reviewing the papers on how Jupiter's orbit works and its gravity, I've changed my stance. It is a 50% protector, 50% attacker. It's 50% chance it'll fling something at us, 50% chance it flings it away. So that's a fun little reviewed statement. That's my tech thing.
And that sort of ties in with my little spacey topic. Firstly on the Remembrance Day, I did try and get the show set together so that we can have it out by the 11th, but that didn't work out. So yeah. In any case, on the space topic, have you guys ever heard of Oumuamua?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
I know it's a bit outdated, but I only heard about it the other day. We might have already seen evidence of extraterrestrial life. Might.
That's that Oumuamua.
That object. That object
came through
our
universe.
That came from outside of our solar system, passed by us, but we caught it a bit late. But the reason why it's possible that it's extraterrestrial, or it could be extraterrestrial, is because of the shape of it. It's elongated, so it's not round like normal space debris is, or sort of spherical like normal space debris. It's twice as long as it's wide, and it's thin enough that the light that hits it from the sun actually accelerates it. So it's a thin light object, and interestingly enough, you would think that your astrophysicists and those type of guys would be very excited about this. But I listened to an interview with one of the guys that really studied the data from that. And the amount of poo-pooing he got from the scientific community is actually worrisome. There's the mainstream physicists and astrophysicists, and it's like, oh, no, it's not possible. It's something else. And they came up with the...
But what is it?
We don't know, because we caught it too late. By the time we picked it up with the telescopes, it was heading away from us already at quite a speed, at quite a clip. But that is the second fastest object that we've ever observed. I think in 2020 March, they observed an asteroid that came from outside of our solar system that was slightly faster than the Oumuamua object. But yeah, that was quite interesting.
Yeah, just the curiosity just kills you, eh?
It does, because I want to know, what is it? Is it alien? Is it not? And if it's not alien,
if it's not alien, what is it?
If it's not alien, it's even weirder. Because the easiest explanation, it's a piece of an alien craft or ship or something that broke away, and that's just flying through space. But if it's not alien, it's even weirder, because how do you get the shape without a tail? Because there's no tail, so it's not decomposing significantly as it's going through space. There's no helium or hydrogen or stuff that's melting off of it. So then what the hell is it, and why is it such a weird shape?
And we'll never know. That's this frustrating part.
No, we'll never know, ever.
Yeah, man. But yeah, that's at least some tech stuff. I don't really have a tech story. No, I don't really have a technology stuff that I can discuss on this tech episode of this tech podcast.
I'll get into my stuff again. I'll have like an all tech episode next week. But yeah, it's good to be back, Oaks, and yeah, I guess I'll have to chop this up. But it's good to be back, and it's awesome to chat to you, Oaks, again.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. It's like I said, it's been a busy year. But I always enjoy dropping in for these episodes and for joining you for this podcast. It's always just such a nice, chill conversation. That's pretty much just more a recording of a conversation than a podcast itself.
Yeah,
definitely.
So I think we're done then. Gents, if you want to plug anything at the end, now's the time. Otherwise, I don't see the point in plugging my own Twitter on my own show, but yeah, it's, if you want to follow me, it's at WOTANZA, WOTANZA. My stuff is changed back to normal now. It's no longer Remembrance Wotan. It's just back to me. It's actually back to the very nice
South African.
Because I got my banner there as the South African, but I've also got my profile picture as the one that our friend Clockwork made for me, which is pretty cool. So
that's cool.
Shout out.
Excellent. Yeah, man. I mean, people that listen to this podcast know who I am. If you don't, just if you want to follow me, Conscious Caracal on Twitter and on YouTube. And I'll check you guys there. And otherwise, stay tuned for the next episode where I'm on the No Script Show.
Sweet.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to join the Discord server that's actually active, that'll also be awesome. Because it's not just an aviation channel.
I haven't had time to look into our Discord channel because I'm actually on so many Discords at this point. It's unbelievable. I must
also trim down mine. It's a bit hectic at one point. But I went through it. When was it? I went through it earlier the week. It's literally just me posting aviation videos like 90% of the time.
I will return to the Discord. Trust me. I shall return.
All right.
All right.
Okay, gents. Enjoy.
All right. Cheers, guys. Have a good one.
Cheers.
Cheers.